Punch in the corner. Irish whip. Whoa, see how Knox falling to his knees. Understand that. Spinning wheel kick!
Starling through the air!
That's right. I wheel kick Tories. Square Enix. We've been talking about Square Enix a little bit this year and well, we've really got a subject to take because they sold a lot of properties and what they got in return was some magic beans! Square Enix has been on a hell of a streak lately, and that streak is one of cold fucking piss. 2022 began with Square Enix president Yosuke Matsuda's notorious pro-blockchain letter, in which he promised to push NFTs, exploit the Metaverse, and focus on the miserable concept of play to earn, while dismissing the merits of people who literally play to have fun. Like that's a bad thing. As well as that, the publisher squirted out an utter disaster of a live service in the form of Babylon's Fall, a game so pathetically uncared about, most of you only just remembered it existed this second. This hilariously underperforming gobbet of cynical microtransaction-laden sputum was followed swiftly by Chocobo Racing GP, which exploited its kid-friendly aesthetic to sell predatory in-app purchases to minors. But this is all par for the course for the latter-day Square Enix. A publisher that frequently gloms on to get-rich-quick schemes has for years tried to leverage once prestigious franchises into trend-chasing fee-to-pay experiences, and serves as a prime example of a short-sighted corporate vulture that expects to make all of the money in the world with an all-or-nothing zero-sum attitude and is dissatisfied with anything less, no matter how successful. I've been calling Square Enix a hack for years, and have been witnessing its decline into predatory indulgence since the release of the disgusting Final Fantasy All the Bravest way back in 2013. This has all come to a head in recent days, with the ultimate confirmation that Square Enix has put making video games a distant second to its primary goal of making money in the cheapest, dirtiest, laziest way possible. See, Square Enix has been delivering on its sick promise to utilise the blockchain and all the scumbag scammery that cryptocurrency allows. As of last year, the company was flogging NFTs for baffling amounts of money, but its recent move shocked even those who expected nothing better from them anymore, as it sold a bunch of its studios and properties for what is honestly a song, all so it could invest more in a technology that almost everybody fucking hates. Now, it has to be said that it's not the only reason Square Enix sold all that stuff, as it believes this will also strengthen the IP it already has. However, the company is betting huge on the technology, and does seem to think that Tomb Raider is less important than NFTs. Yes, the company believes so much in all of this crypto bullshit, or is perhaps already so deeply invested it's chasing a sunk cost, that it believes most of its Western intellectual property isn't hot enough in comparison, and has let all of it go for a fraction of its earning potential. For $300 million, the video game conglomerate Embrace Group has agreed to buy Crystal Dynamics, Eidos Montreal, and Square Enix Montreal, with a combined 1,100 employees. This includes all of these studios' properties, including Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Thief, The Legacy of Kain, and a back catalogue of over 50 titles. Included in this deal is stuff the studios are working on right now, which includes a brand new Tomb Raider game. While $300 million is a lot to any normal human being, compared to the $1.3 billion Embracer spent acquiring Gearbox, it's an absolute steal. Tomb Raider alone is a hot enough commodity to be worth major investment in, especially if the work's already being done to produce a brand new mainstream installment. But to get 3 studios, 50 games, and multiple beloved franchises for a fraction of the cost of Gearbox is genuinely fucking stellar. The transaction will assist the company in adapting to the changes underway in the global business environment by establishing a more efficient allocation of resources, which will enhance corporate value by accelerating growth in the company's core businesses in the digital entertainment domain, babbled Square Enix in a typically corporate press release before hilariously adding, in addition, the transaction enables the launch of new businesses by moving forward with investments in fields including blockchain, AI, and the cloud. So yeah, Square Enix basically sold a mountain of quality talent and titles in order to spunk it up a wall bricked with blockchain. Square Enix's obsession with cryptocurrency, NFTs, and the Metaverse is usually dismaying, bordering on nightmarish, but frankly I think this is hilarious. The impulse sale in order to bet big on a sector of the market that is attractive only to con merchants and their marks is almost poetic when you consider how often Square Enix has tried to scam money out of its own fan base with live service guff over the years. It's been demonstrated time and time again that NFTs are a scam, and Square Enix has fallen for it hook, line and sinker, even as similarly indulgent corporations like Electronic Arts are cooling off on their earliest excitement about crypto dickery. Square Enix and sex abuse company Ubisoft seem committed to trying to force it down our throats like so many ape-avatared NFT bros on Twitter. I genuinely want to know how much Square Enix's executives already invested in Ethereum and are desperate to offload their currency investments, given how desperate they seem to make blockchain a thing in gaming. Seriously, how much money has Matsuda sunk into NFTs? Because those are the only people left who shill this shit so hard. People who sunk their cash into the blockchain and are now trying to find victims to pass the grift onto. Anyway, the truly funny part of all this is that Square Enix agreed to the transaction a literal day after it was reported the bottom fell out of NFTs, and I mean fell the fuck out. Weeks ago, we talked on this very show about how NFTs were swiftly failing as the shills started to lessen, the amusing PR disasters mounted up, and interest across media had completely deadened. Well, now NFTs are, as the Wall Street Journal describes, flatlining. The NFT market is down 92% since last September. The amount of active wallets in said market has decreased by 88% since November. Those who bet on NFTs have been more and more discovering that they weren't the grifters, but the grifted all along, such as the guy who bought the right to pretend he owned Jack Dorsey's stupid tweet for $2.9 million and struggled to get a bid above $3,600. Even when the hilarious story broke and the offer increased, the most anyone wanted for it was 14 grand, a sliver of a shadow of what was paid. Incidentally, the wanker who bought it isn't interested in selling it for that much. They want to wait for someone who's truly worthy. Square Enix glomming onto this market now is so fucking funny. Don't get me wrong, it does suck for the hundreds of employees who will be upheaved by this acquisition and now face the dreaded spectre of restructuring, aka layoffs. But for the executive scam artists who run Square Enix, and anybody pushing crypto is a scam artist, I absolutely fucking hope this blows up in their stupid, greedy faces. Fuck Square Enix, the absolute gaggle of charlatans, the den, the vulturine hacks, the Arse Candles. Now, it has to be said, of course, that the blockchain is not entirely NFTs, and Square Enix, while heavily invested in that rapidly failing market, has made clear its intention to indulge in all things crypto. That said, the entire ecosystem has failed to gain traction with anybody outside of the crypto bro bubble and whatever celebrities they roped into their pump and dump schemes. Matsuda's embrace of play to earn as a concept was widely rejected by the game-buying public, and nobody outside of a comparatively minor cult gives a single solitary shit about the Metaverse. Let's face it, NFTs were the closest to mainstream relevance any of this blockchain shit ever got. It was NFTs that gaming publishers bet on. It was NFTs that fast food chains tried to cram down our greasy throats. It was NFTs that actors and musicians foolishly flaunted, shitty little links to JPEGs that confer no ownership and are used mainly by scammers to scam other scammers. Environmentally harmful financial waste during an economic period period where the cost of living is skyrocketing and people simply don't have the money to spend on pretending they own tweets. For Square Enix, maybe its leadership somehow thinks what it sold wasn't worth all that much. This is, after all, a company that has spent nigh on a decade expressing disappointment in the sales performance of these games, even as each installment sells millions of copies. One of the biggest offenders of the below expectations phenomenon that plagues mainstream gaming, Square Enix is one of those companies that seems to feel entitled to selling tens and tens of millions of copies of games based on literally no corroborative market factors or evidence. It's quite possible that it truly believes Tomb Raider and its disappointing sales pale in comparison to whatever it can swindle out of people in the crypto markets. But I'll tell you what isn't possible: that Tomb Raider will ever be less valuable than an NFT long term. What isn't possible is that Embracer Group won't easily make good on what is a hell of an acquisition. Square Enix's loss, and I hope it suffers a lot of loss on the back of this get-rich-quick scheme, is only going to be Embracer's gain. And frankly, it's our gain as well. Like I said, Square Enix is run by hack fucks. It was barely touching a ton of quality IP, and its recent output has been so driven by avarice and desperation for profit that it's severely harming the quality of its product. I mean, Jesus, look at what it last did with Legacy of Kain. I'd rather literally every game Square Enix publishes to be in the hands of better people, or just anyone else, because it became clear years ago that Square Enix is a shitty AAA corporation that will vandalize, break, and tarnish the fuck out of its games in the name of quick and filthy profiteering. I'm glad Deus Ex is out of Square Enix's hands. I'm glad Tomb Raider won't be published by a company that thought Babylon's Fall was an okay thing to do to us. I'm glad Thief won't be sold by a company so into literal thievery as the crypto-addled Square Enix. Frankly, and this might come off as a little mean, I think it'd be a good day on this hell planet if I woke up one morning to hear Yosuke Matsuda went bankrupt.
I truly wish every executive at Square Enix a bad time. Not just for this, but mostly because they're executives, and I wish everyone in the executive class a bad time. They're shit. They are on the list with landlords as some of the most useless people in society. In fact, many of them will inevitably be landlords, parasitic bastards such as they are. I certainly hope that those who were working at the studios that got acquired find some job stability, job security. Hopefully they keep their jobs. These corporate acquisitions almost always come with restructuring, which, as I said, is a fancy corpo term for layoffs that are gonna suck. So who knows what will happen in the future with Square Enix? The only thing we can absolutely guarantee, the only thing we can be sure of in this tumultuous market, in these tumultuous times, is that there will never, ever be a Babylon's Fall 2. Thank God for me.